Hello, my teacher friends. Welcome to the Beyond Measure podcast. This show exists to provide a weekly source of solidarity for studio music teachers. My name is Christina Whitlock, and I am here serving as your self appointed anytime piano teacher friend. I am able to do this work thanks to those who support me on Patreon for as little as $3 a month. If you feel as though you have received $3 worth of value from my podcast in the last month, please consider signing up at patreon.com/Beyond Measure Podcast. And now, let's get on with the show. You are listening to episode 159 of the Beyond Measure podcast. Cheers to overcoming the weight of potential. When we look at all the ways we can cultivate a satisfying teacher life, I think there are few things that get in our way more than this notion of potential. When a student unexpectedly stops their lessons, what do? We tend to pout all about their potential. When our own children choose different passions than ours, we lament their potential for that thing we love. When students aren't practicing enough, like to our liking, what do we say? They are squandering their potential. When we think about the limitations that life has put on us, we often wonder about our own potential, like where it went or where we went wrong or whatever. Now, don't get me wrong, because potential is really the stuff of teacher life, right? I mean, what kind of educators would we be if we didn't look at our students as these infinite fountains of possibility? Our belief in their ability to accomplish great things is a cornerstone of what we do. But I have to wonder how much joy is sapped from musical experience in the name of potential. Have you ever been blinded by your own assessments of student potential in a way that sends them down a path that they don't really want to travel? I know I have. Have you ever been discouraged by a performance that you have given because you knew that you could have or should have played better? I imagine that one applies to all of us. And why? Because we had the potential to do better, right? I always laugh to myself when teachers talk about students who leave before realizing their quote, full potential. I mean, that stings, right? It is so hard on us to see these talented, capable students leave our studios when we know they could have done more. But here's the thing: who among us has actually realized our fullest potential? I mean, have you accomplished everything that you can possibly do on your instrument? I know I haven't. Even outside of music, are there a million things you could have done? Skills you could have honed, but for whatever reason didn't? Of course there are. The notion of someone's fullest potential is a moving target, and it is not something that we should use to determine any kind of success. It's maddening, though, right? To accept the fact that you are capable of doing more, but you're never going to accomplish it all. I'm not saying this is an easy pill to swallow because I struggle with that. But I do think it's one of those truths that we need to hear to make way for more satisfaction in our teacher lives. I think we need to make peace with the fact that no one, not us and none of our students, are ever going to accomplish what we tend to see as our fullest potential. Besides, how many times are we wrong about someone's likely future accomplishments? How many students have went on to accomplish more than you ever expected them to do? Let's be honest. And likewise, how many students start out picking up concepts lightning fast and then just end up stalling out as they get older? It happens. It should come as no surprise that I see making music as a long game. As they say, it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? There are many ways to consider ourselves successful in developing lifelong musicians. But considering the outcomes of who did or did not reach their quote potential, that's not one of them. So today we are releasing that weight, my friends, the weight of this wily concept called potential. We are letting it go. Let me tell you a story from outside of music teacher world. The summer before I left for undergrad, in addition to my piano teaching, I took on a job as a cashier at a local department store. Picture a 2000s version of Target, but much smaller, set in a tiny country town. Okay. I'm going to tell you something that may surprise you. I loved being a cashier. Seriously. If I could make a full time living being a cashier, there's a very good chance that I would choose to be camped out behind a register, making small talk with people as they buy their toilet paper and socks. It was such a game to me. People generally hold very low expectations for their cashier. Like they are going to assume that I was going to be grumpy or, I don't know, blase. They likely assumed that I was just there to collect a paycheck and call it a day. Well, friends, I took this as a supreme challenge. I loved watching customers like melt before my very eyes. When something wouldn't ring up the correct price, like you could visibly see a person steel themselves and prepare for the fight. They were sure that they were going to have to fight for their desired price. Instead, I would say, "Oh, sure, let me call someone to check on that sign for you." And if they grumbled about being in a hurry, I would just say over the phone, "Hey, let's make this happen as quickly as possible, please. This gentleman needs to move on with his day." There's probably a whole episode lurking here about the teaching lessons I learned while working retail, but I will say this for now. People just want to be seen, right? They want their feelings to be acknowledged. But experience has taught them that that is not going to be the case. So people approach cashiers and the like, assuming that they are going to be ignored or seen as a nuisance. Now, a lot has changed since the year 2000 when I was cashiering, but I can say for certain this is more true today than it ever was. And when you show a customer that their expectation is not, in fact, the case, well, friends, it is so fun to watch someone change their tune before your very eyes. It is hands down the best part of that kind of work. So I would have regular customers actually wait in my line while others were open just because they appreciated the way I did my work. I mean, elderly gentlemen told me just about every day how more people needed to do their job like me. Anyway, this isn't a story about what an awesome cashier I was. Let's get back to the problem of potential. Obviously, I did my job well. I was really proud of it, right? And when it came down to my final week at the store before I moved away to college, my store manager asked to meet with me. He told me that he knew this was a long shot, but he saw so much potential in me that if I decided not to leave for college, that he would greenlight me to be promoted to the customer service desk. Now, I have no idea how this translates today, but back then, the people who worked the customer service desk were a big deal. They seemed to know everything about everything, and they had power to make actual decisions about things in the store. They also made an actual living wage. So I sat through this spiel about my great potential with the future of this retail company, and I thanked him for the opportunity and then said, "Huh, yeah, I'm going to college." And herein lies the lesson, friends. From this man's perspective, where the retail world was king, he saw potential in me to do great things, to climb that ladder. And I'm sure that I could have. I had the potential to work that customer service desk and move on to whatever was next, right? But I didn't. And I'm sure you would agree, it's fine that I didn't. After all, just because you could doesn't mean you should. That's a good one, right? Here's another one. Once upon a time, I had this brilliant student. To this day, the most gifted musician I've ever worked with. And I do not use that term lightly. This guy ate music up. He just couldn't get enough. He wanted to play anything and everything, and he could do it. He was even just built like a pianist. He was tall and thin and had these long, spindly fingers. Technique came so naturally to him. And I mean, he really just defied the odds in so many ways. We were prepping auditions at major music schools, playing concerto competitions, the whole bit. At the start of his senior year, he came to me one day and he told me he'd changed his mind and he didn't want to go to college right away after high school. Instead, he was enrolling in welding classes and wanted to work for a while before going to school. He wanted to learn a trade so that he would always have financial security so he could then pursue whatever music interests came his way later in life. Now, I felt like I had whiplash. The only thing this young man had ever expressed to me was pursuing a career in piano performance and in teaching. And if any of my students could have done it, it would have been him. He had all the potential in this field. And when he first told me this, I will confess, inside I got a little panicky. He couldn't do this, right? I mean, I never recommend students go to school exclusively for music performance, but I was okay with this kid doing it because he could. At the same time, is there anything wrong with his plan? Of course not. It actually makes a lot of sense. And this was several years ago, so I can now tell you that he is doing so well. Those long, agile fingers he has, they've become a tremendous asset to him as a welder. I think we can all recognize the value in learning a skilled trade to subsidize whatever musical ambitions we have, right? It doesn't have to be the path for everyone, but it's certainly nothing to turn our noses up at. And yet, there is this reality to being a lifelong musician and piano teacher where so much of my perspective is framed around this work that I do. You and I have this in common, my friend. We can't help but quietly assess a student's potential when we hear them play. Again, it's a really important part of what we do. But I hope we never wear this idea of potential like a weight around our necks. Or even more so, I hope we never place it over the necks of our students or our own children. We all know musicians are building a wide variety of skill sets while at work at the instrument. And the truth is, those are skill sets that can and will be used in many different ways. This goes for you, for me, and for all of our students. I want you to think about that. Right now, it's time for a toast, followed by our new teacher friend of the week. So get excited for that. But first, we toast. Studio music teacher friends from all around the world, I need you to do me a favor today. and cast a wider vision for yourself and for your students, okay? I am begging you to acknowledge that there are a vast number of possibilities that will result in good things for each of us. Be cautious not to limit options based on a narrow view of potential outcomes. The truth is this: regardless of how long a student studies with us or what musical opportunities they do or do not choose to participate in along the way, we have potential to influence their lives for the better, even when our students choose paths that we don't understand or don't agree with. I don't want you to be discouraged by those decisions. Do not weigh yourself or anyone else down with the burden of potential. I want you to think about that, okay? And while you are, this is me raising my glass way up in the air for that one. I hope you'll do the same. Here, here. Okay, friends, great news. I have a new teacher friend of the week to share with you. Woo! Our teacher friend of the week this week is none other than Marion Pease. Marion is a terrific supporter of mine, and she recently made a post in my Facebook group that I wanted to share with you. The name of that group, by the way, is Teacher Friends of the Beyond Measure podcast. And if you are on Facebook but not in that group, you should be. It's a great place to vet ideas when you want a smaller sampling of opinions from a trusted group of teachers. Anyway, in that group, Marion Pease shared that she had recently begun utilizing one of my recommended fidget toys to help stop her students from playing the piano while she was talking. My favorite fidget toy is what's called a marble mesh. It's literally a marble inside a mesh sleeve. It's quiet, but good sensory stimulation for fidgety kiddos. I have them linked on my list of favorite things, which can be found at christinawhitlock.com/favorites. Anyway, Marion Pease, teacher friend of the week, she posted this story saying that she had been using these toys for a few weeks, and the short version was 100% success rate. I love that. Marion told us about a student who she's had for 6 years who told her how much she appreciated having this fidget available. Her student said, "Do you know how hard it is not to play the piano while you are instructing?" This is so great. Marion went on to say that they had a short discussion, and evidently it had been one of the hardest things for her, and she never knew. It just goes to show that we never know what's going on in our students' minds. We never know the preoccupations in our students' brains. But if you struggle with students who play while you are talking or who seem overly anxious, I strongly suggest you try casually handing them something to fidget with. There are plenty of options these days, but I love this marble mesh because it's silent, it's simple, it's not really capable of distracting a student in any way, and it's also really inexpensive. For the ones I love, you can find them at christinawhitlock.com/favorites. So anyway, congratulations, Marion Pease, for being our teacher friend of the week and sharing that we all still have some tricks to learn, don't we? As for the rest of you, thank you, as always, for being here with me today. Thanks for sharing this podcast with your teacher friends and for sharing the love of this work with me. You are the absolute best. Onward and upward toward releasing the weight of potential, friends. I'll be back with you next week.